Welcome tonight. We have a presentation for you on the Mobility Hub for the City of North Miami. So everybody's welcome. We have a few dignitaries here tonight. Larry Spring Jr. is here somewhere. Right here. Oh, there you are. City Manager, North Miami. Would you like to say a few words, Mr. Spring?
Thank you.
Would you like the microphone, or are you going to boom it out?
I don't know. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Okay. I usually like to go without. It's locked. Okay. All right. So I have to use the microphone because we're on TV, I guess. I just want to welcome everyone this evening. This is a first step for us in evaluating our connectivity to downtown and to the rest of the county. Looking at these options with the team here. It's critically important for us. And so your input, I'm sure we'll be doing a few more of these public meetings, but your input tonight and through the rest of this process is critical to our success. So I ask for everybody's real feedback and input, and we'll see where we go with this. But this is certainly, like I said, a monumental step. Like to recognize my staff. We have Rasha in the back with the CRA, who gets to fund all this stuff, and our planning staff, Debbie Love, Tanya Wilson-Sajor, Marlene here. So if you have any questions, they're around. Our Chinatown project manager, Karen Lau, in the back as well, also here. So just want to thank everybody for coming and enjoy.
Looks like we're going to be behind the podiums tonight. I do apologize for that because I'd rather be walking around with the microphone. If we could bring the screen back up, please. Thank you. And just to let you know, my name is David Yurtson. I'm a land planner, landscape architect, part-time artist, and sometimes a public facilitator for meetings like this. And to my left is Bankum Kalra. Bankum is my right hand, and I guess I'm his left hand, so we both work together. We're with a company called IBI Group, and IBI is thanks. It's working?
Try it out.
It's working. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. IBI Group is a very large company, but we are based right here in Florida in Pompano Beach. So we are big, but the group you see tonight this is the people that you're going to be working with over the next few months. We also have in the back Patricia Ramuto, who's our engineer, who's working on the infrastructure component. We also have, who else do we have here tonight? With Kevin Greiner with IBI. Kevin was hiding. He's our economist. He's going to be talking about economics, economic development, and really what we have here in the North Miami area, not talking about directly what's happening in the future, but what we have today and what's existing. Is that good?
You're talking, echoing everywhere.
Is that better? Okay. And we also have Harold Charles. There he is. Harold is one of our consultants working with us, and Harold is infrastructure, engineering, is local, understands exactly what we're dealing with in terms of what's under the ground. And infrastructure, if you're doing economic development, if you're doing any kind of community restructuring, you need to know whether or not the infrastructure is there in place and ready to go. And if we have any other city staff here, I see someone that I recognize right there.
John.
John O'Brien? Yeah. Hi, John. And anyone else who would like to introduce themselves? No? Okay. Wonderful pictures. That guy, that's me right there about 5 years ago. I've changed a little bit, don't you think? Patricia, Kevin, we have a SPG, we have a sub-consultant economist who's not here this evening, and of course, Bonkin. Please. And what are we doing tonight? Well, we're off schedule a little bit, but this is the welcome address. Welcome, everybody. And project overview, we're going to talk about what is constituted in this project? What are we going to be doing for the city of North Miami? Mobility trends in Southeast Florida. As you know, there's going to be a kind of a shift. The population's getting a little bit younger, and my daughter, who's 31, 32 years old, doesn't even own a car. So younger people don't have the same priorities in terms of mobility and transportation that us older baby boomers like myself have. So there's a little bit of a transition, and we'll be talking about that. We'll also be talking about the economic trends in Southeast Florida, and that's going to be Kevin. And then we've got something fun. I know some people said, we have to vote. Yes, you do. You have to vote. We have clickers, and we're going to go through a series of 10 questions. And what that does is it helps us create the parameters for the plan as we move through this process. Tonight is more of an introduction, and it's kind of an informational meeting for you to tell us what you think we ought to be studying, what we ought to be looking at and evaluating. And then understanding mobility, and we call it mobility-oriented development. What that means is we're dealing with a mobility hub, which is all different types of mobility. It's walking, bicycles, cars, trucks, trains, the whole 9 yards. And we're going to break out at the end. It's going to be a very short session and talk about pains and gains. What that means is tell us directly what you think are the problems here in North Miami in terms of transportation or mobility or getting from one place to the other. What fabric in North Miami is a problem, and how can we change that? And the gains, what would you like to see in the future? What kind of changes would you like to see in North Miami, the positive things? How can we use this mobility hub and this transition in terms of transportation systems? How can we use that into the future? Next, please. And, oh yeah, and the way forward is just, we'll talk about the next meeting on May 10th. Project overview, of course, this is 125th Street, 123rd, FEC Railroad. Everyone's familiar with this area, right? You've all seen it. And 125th, of course, is the main street for North Miami. Next, please. What is a mobility hub? A mobility hub is a combination of transportation systems. It's pedestrians, which is streetscapes and sidewalks, people walking to and from. It's bicycles, which gets into the multimodal kind of transportation systems. A lot of people bike to work nowadays. A lot of people use it for recreation, trails, rails to trails, that sort of thing. Transit, in terms of buses and jitneys and that sort of thing. And the new one, which is going to be, of course, the commuter railroad. That's the FEC one, which is a very big deal in Florida. And it's really the center point of this study is how do we deal with all these different modes of transportation, and how do we combine them to make it into a unified plan? Next, please. Transit-oriented development is one of the things that IBI has studied, and we have many, many projects that deal with that. This is a little different than just transit-oriented development. Transit-oriented development is really a development around a transit station. We're dealing with something a little bit more global here. We're dealing with transportation systems that extend out beyond the FEC Railroad corridor into the neighborhoods, and then all the way to North Miami High School, which I think is a hub, and then back down 125th, and then to the hospital and the school and so forth. So it takes in a much larger area than just the transit-oriented development that's traditional in the studies that we do. Another way of describing it, transit, transportation-oriented, open space, and development. One of the things that's interesting, I think, about North Miami, when you start looking at the map and you start looking at the colors of buildings and roads and so forth, and you notice that there's no park space that's within our study area. There's no open space within our study area. The interesting thing is if you look at the Google map, you'll see there is vacant space, parking lots and misused space or disused space, whatever you want to call it. So there's opportunity for open space that would be surrounding this mobility hub. And that's one of the things we'd like to talk about this evening, whether or not we can do that. And these are some successful projects that are considered transit-oriented development or mobility-oriented development, whatever you want to call it. This is Yaletown District in Vancouver.
Yes, that's where I moved from 6 months ago to Florida from Vancouver. So yes, I've lived transit. I have used all these spaces. So one of the things that was very unique about this whole transit-oriented development project which is there in Vancouver is there were multiple modes available. I did not own a car for the last 7 years like your daughter did not own for the last 6 years. I was one of those who did not. I moved to South Florida. My wife and I have made a conscious decision to own just one car right now. It's what we're trying to do. It's hard, but it's going to change, I think, soon. She's going to get a job. Right now she doesn't have a job, and then things are going to change after that. But the Yaletown district, the reason why we put this up as well is this was also an old industrial area which was next to the railroad tracks, and how the transformation happened between the old industrial uses that we're seeing and how the vibrant activities started coming after that railroad redevelopment was done.
And Fruitvale Village in Oakland, again, another success. This is your basic downtown parking garage. And, you know, architects like myself, we like to design parking lots so they don't look like parking garages anymore, so you put a facade on them. And as you can see, it's not always successful. It just looks like a parking garage. Well, this was redeveloped into a mixed-use center, and with transit above and wonderful plazas. It's a great project.
The other important thing for this particular project is often we work in transit-oriented development across the globe, Canada, India, different parts of the world. What happens is when transit comes in, a lot of times you also start seeing gentrification. The property prices start go up, and you start seeing a shortage of affordable housing that's coming in. This is one example in California where that was done as a conscious decision that there's going to be a mandatory percentage of workforce housing and affordable housing near the station that needs to be met. So as a study, we are looking at all these examples because it becomes very important for North Miami's context as well to look at how housing is going to be a part of the new development.
We like to tell, especially in the beginning part of these kind of projects, you have to have faith. You have to believe. And we've worked on because I'm older, I've worked on a lot of projects that were done in the early 2000s or late 1990s, that with the implementation program you're dealing with in these planning projects, sometimes they extend out 15, 20 years. Now, I get to go back and see projects that we've master planned, and they're actually building the wonderful things that we had designed. And what a transformation. It's kind of interesting to see. But this is City Place. If you're familiar with West Palm Beach, this is a really nice project. I like these before and after shots because it does show the city fabric and all the different new colors and the larger buildings and the more verticality and that sort of thing. But more importantly, it's got pedestrian space. It's got places for people and pedestrians and bicycles and multimodal systems. So it's a very pedestrian-oriented kind of space.
The story behind this was also that it's not just that rail transit is going to come and catalyze the whole thing. This was done much before Tri-Rail was coming in. There is the whole change towards prioritizing pedestrians, cyclists to make it more vibrant. And that's the story which West Palm Beach sort of tells us in our backyard, that there is something that can be done.
And
Back to, sorry.
there it is. Miracle Mile. Coral Gables. I don't know if anyone has been down there lately. Doesn't that look a lot like 125th Street today? I mean, if you look at this picture, it kind of has the same kind of feel to it in terms of not like this, and maybe somewhere in between. But what we would like to do is create something a little bit more like Miracle Mile in Coral Gables, where it has the trees and the people and the activity that's going on. Project Need. And as you know, there have been many, many studies done in the city of North Miami. Many studies. And Bankam and I have reviewed all of them and read all of them and studied all of them. And what we're trying to do is we're not working in a vacuum here, not at all. In fact, we're taking what was done before, the transportation, the signage, the streetscape, and all these other projects, combining it and amalgamating it together, putting into a giant jar and trying to come up with what we think is a sort of a layering system for how these projects all fit together. And our project does bring all these aspects together. Transit-oriented development, corridor design, that is 125th is being redesigned, mobility alternatives, now we've got the Lime Bike, and community redevelopment, the projects that are already changing the fabric of North Miami.
I think one of the other things that we're also making sure in this is that, like David said, there's been a lot of studies that have been done. For us, it's important to connect the dots through this as well. There's a lot of good work that's been put in. There is a lot of starts that we have. Now, how do we take that to the end and phasing? The important part is also to look at resilience. We are in South Florida, and we do know about climate resilience being a challenge. And so how do we start looking at this particular project to help us guide development in the right manner, in the right strategic locations?
And here's our study area. 6th Avenue, 125th. This is the Dixie intersection, I call it, but it's the mashing together of a lot of different roadways that come together in one point. 125th down to the crossing, and then 123rd takes over right at the track. So 125th from 10th to 6th is now being redesigned. It's under study. And a lot of the other projects are also. But if you see this dashed line, and we use half mile as a kind of a walking radius for people who are able-bodied, and this is a mile radius. Our study is this circle of paracircles, but it also extends out here.
Yeah, so that's our 2-mile radius that we're looking at. This is the 1/4 mile. This is the half mile. So we're talking about a 5-minute walk, the 10-minute walk from the center of 125th and 123rd. The important part is that how do you reach there? How do you reach downtown? There's only so much capacity that's going to be there for the cars. A lot of people were late today. I'm sure traffic was a part of that reason, everyone coming in. So what we like to see is how do we connect these corridors better? What are the different modes that can come in as well?
And this is our project flowchart. This is basically what we are obligated to do. Kickoff meeting, of course, has already taken place. We've done most of the mapping database. That's done. Existing conditions and inventory analysis, we've gone through that. And there we are right there, workshop number 1. And then we get to the next step, strategic plan. And we've got another workshop coming up May 10th that will flash up on the board a little bit later. And then way at the end, I don't have to read all of these, the final plan, 09, sometime in June, right?
Yes. So we're going to start with a little bit of the mobility trends. This image, everyone's been on 95. I live in Boca, drive here a number of times. We're looking at being in an area in Miami where we're talking about the top 20 for traffic congestion in the country, the South Florida region. We're looking at one of the most congested roads that we're going to be looking at for working. When we're leaving our homes, we're going to Miami or to Fort Lauderdale or to the different employment centers. We're all contributing to that as well, and it's all personal vehicles. We're talking about the average Miami commuter is looking at spending more than a week of work annually and just being stuck on 95. Kevin, you just came from 95, right? You were in Miami? South Miami. How long did it take you to get here?
15 minutes.
Hour and 15 minutes. Distance?
15 miles.
15 miles, 1 hour, 15 minutes. That's Kevin. He just came at 5 o'clock, 4:35. So that's what we're talking about. This is another study that was done by ESRI, and where we're looking at is, if you see this particular part, is where we're looking at North Miami. And what we see with the reds are the car-dependent areas. The greens are rarely walkable. The yellows are often walkable. And the dark greens are walkable. So what we are somewhere in between rarely walkable and car-dependent. The rest of Florida, yes, there's a lot of car dependency. Where you start looking at the greens coming in is where we would like to see the change in North Miami. We don't want the reds coming up either. We're looking at this is peak hour traffic projections in the future in 2050, 2030 that can we afford to have 98% of people driving for every trip. Whatever you see on this map, these are what you look in Google Maps. When you see all the reds while you're driving, that's what we could be heading towards. There has been a transit evolution over the years. We've got the FEC rail, the Amtrak, we've got the Bright Line coming in, the Smart Plan. A lot of investment is being done at the state level as well to look at transit, because there's only so much that we can keep adding in terms of number of lanes. I-95 can grow only so much, 125th can only grow so much. We're going to run out of land very soon to keep adding lanes. there are these efforts which are happening at the county level. We're talking about a trail system, a cycling trail system. This is the county's trail system which is going to connect. Now, this is at a larger level, long-range vision plan, which we're seeing at 20 years. What's interesting is also looking at this. In Miami-Dade County, between 2005 and 2015, there were somewhere around 3,500 in 2005, we're talking about cyclists. And they've reached somewhere around 7,000. People have started accepting that, at least for shorter trips. And those are trends that we need to think of while we're planning for the next 10 years, 20 years as well. Sorry, go ahead.
One point I wanted to make, and I think it's important. If you live in a place like Atlanta, for example, which is highly populated, the trend now isn't to drive up and down the highways, but now younger people are living in and working in the same locations. That is, their nodes are developing along Peachtree, for example, that are becoming places where people work, where they live, where they shop. They're all in one place, so they don't have to drive anymore. Now, we call those little urban centers cores or redevelopment cores. What they really are is where people are congregating because they simply don't want to drive anymore.
And these help. What we're seeing is this trend of shared mobility. The Miami Beach Deco Bike, public bicycle sharing. Fort Lauderdale has one. West Palm Beach has one. We have one. We've got the Lime Bike also. Now, how does that grow to the city level is what we need to see. When I was living in Vancouver, I was a member of a bike sharing. I was a member of a car sharing, which is the Zip car, which right now exists in Johnson and Wales University. We could walk, yes, because it was a very comfortable shaded walk where we could go. And it was cold in Vancouver. It was rainy, but still people would be walking with their umbrellas. It's beautiful in Florida. The walk is going to be a lot more pleasant than in Vancouver. That was one of the reasons why I moved to Florida, was I was getting depressed. I needed to see the sun. I really needed to see the sun. We're looking at Uber, Lyft, all as those ride-sharing options which exist. The reason why my wife and I can afford one car is because whenever she needs to go somewhere, it is pretty affordable to take a Uber pool. It was, I think she had to go 2 miles to her gym, and it was only $5. So she's like, all right, I can do that. $5 on Uber pool, and we don't need to own a car. Those are things that people are deciding that they would have to do. These are some of the other things that are happening, which is tactical urbanism. Now, this is just, again, we planners and designers love to use these jargon somewhere or the other. We put in these technical words that tactical urbanism. What it essentially is something which is going to be a quick win. One of the things that needs to be done is to start thinking about how do you make it more interesting for pedestrians. And it has to be done fast to test it out. These projects which were done in Tampa or the pop-up projects in Miami, this is one example which could be something for the Mocha Plaza over there. We could be doing a pop-up to show people what does it mean to be outside.
Yeah, and I like the word tactical, don't you? The tactical urbanism. It makes us mild-mannered planners really sound a lot more assertive than we really are. But one of the ideas for tactical urbanism is to reclaim the street back from automobiles. And it's kind of an interesting concept because what it does is once you get into the space and you're at first it's a little uncomfortable, you're standing in the middle of a street, which usually has a lot of cars going by. You've reclaimed it. It's become multimodal. It's become a social space. We had we'll talk about it later, but we had talked about how we would do that here in North Miami. We are going to do it here in North Miami. It's going to be fun.
And yes, this is maybe not a reality right now. A lot of us have question marks on this, when this is going to happen, but it is going to happen. We're going to have self-driving cars coming in. No? 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, maybe. But when these things come in is where a lot of things change, because here's where you don't need on-street parking anymore, because these are going to go and drive somewhere. I'm not saying all cars are going to be eliminated on the streets, but there's going to be a shift. We're looking
even now, a lot of luxury cars do have lane sensors, so you get outside the lane and it pushes you back in. Cars will park themselves now. You just You don't have to learn how to parallel park anymore, which is really great for me. So you let go of the wheel, the car parks itself. The self-driving cars, of course, there's a lot more technology. I know Bonkum said 5, maybe 10 years, but it's definitely coming. It's just unavoidable. It'll be here.
The reason why we're discussing all this is because this project that we've taken up is going to be looking at how the city could change, the alternatives that are going to be changing how we live. Let's at least look at it and see whether there are certain things that we need to be prepared for. I like going back. All right. I'm going to ask Kevin to take over on this. Sure.
I'll use this.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Kevin Griner. I'm an economist and a planner. I'm going to talk tonight about the economic forces that are both driving and that hope that North Miami can leverage to develop not only the mobility hub, but the corridors that connect it as well. I do a lot of work in North Miami. I've represented the 7th Avenue CRA for the last 3 years. Very familiar with the entire area. In my humble opinion, I really think the city of North Miami is sitting at a very unique historic opportunity. There's a number of regional forces, a number of economic forces that are really kind of conspiring to favor places like North Miami. Sea level rise being one of them. The way the economy's changing, the way people use office space, the way large companies want to locate their employees, where people work, how they choose to live. So a number of forces are really conspiring in North Miami's favor if it wants to take advantage of them. So when you look, am I going the right way? No. If you look, the first kind of advantage that North Miami has is this absolute strategic location. Don't ever forget that this is one of the most strategic entrances to Miami-Dade County. It's connected by every major mode of transportation. Never forget that it's one of the most traversed corridors in the entire United States. 260,000 vehicles go up and down I-95 every single day. That's right at the edge of the city. If you add together all of the cars that are going through and across North Miami each day, it's close to 500,000 vehicles a day. So this is a major gateway to North Miami, or to Miami-Dade County. When we look at the study area, the way we look at it is we don't confine ourselves to looking at the economy of just the city of North Miami. We look at really 2 other ways to look at it. One is what we call the market area. So when you hear me refer to the market area, that's the radius within about a 12-minute drive of the center of the city of North Miami. The other is we look at what's called the trade area, and that's really closer in. That's the radius that's about a 3-minute drive surrounding North Miami. So those are really the geographies that we look at when we look at the economy. And the first thing to note is that the market area, 12-minute radius around North Miami, is a major economic region within not just the county but the state. If the area that's a 12-minute radius around North Miami was its own city, it'd be the 4th largest city in the state of Florida. It's over 240,000 people living and working right there. So it's a major destination. It's 13% of the county's population. It's 9% of the county's economy. So this is a major economic destination within the county and within South Florida. Don't ever forget that. You've also got, this is a very talented workforce that lives in North Miami. It's a very diverse and talented workforce. A lot of jobs are right here in the city of North Miami and inside that trade area. Basically 23,000 jobs are just inside the trade area. That's significant. That's a lot of employment. North Miami has also evolved as one of the professional capitals of the county. There's actually more businesses in highly skilled, highly educated professional services than there are in West Kendall. This really has evolved as a headquarters for professional services, businesses of all kind that actually pay well and are very high skilled. Employment has grown faster than the rest of the county. The labor force has grown about twice as fast as the rest of the county just inside that trade area, including the city of North Miami. And employment has been steadily dropping, still higher than the rest of the county, but it has been dropping. You also have major investment at the edges of North Miami that do a number of things. They signal tremendous investor confidence in this part of the county and in North Miami. Also, leveraged properly, the major developments at the edge of North Miami can be used to promote the rest of the development, particularly the development of the mobility hub and TOD in North Miami. Very potent in terms of using that. The rule of development, the golden rule of development, is that you address your issues and your weaknesses, you build on your strengths. I'll say it again. Address your issues, build on your strengths. So when we look at the weaknesses of what's happening here, and there are some, Banca mentioned traffic congestion. That's a function of where people live and work mostly. Also the people trying to move east-west through the city of North Miami. Traffic congestion is a major economic issue. It could end up choking the region. It's getting that bad. Not only we're the fifth worst congested metro area in North America, we're also one of the most dangerous, highest number of accidents. Traffic is becoming a real issue. We're hearing from businesses from outside the state, they're actually hesitant about moving operations into South Florida because traffic is so bad. They don't want to be paying their employees to sit in traffic for 2 hours every day when they could be working. So it's starting to impact the economy in a very significant way. Employment growth, this is a regional issue. The types of jobs, now Miami-Dade as a county has more jobs than it's ever had in its history, but the types of jobs it's been creating since the recession, more low-wage jobs than high-wage jobs. And this is a critical issue for not just the county, but it's a critical issue for North Miami as well. Can this type of development that we're talking about, can it be a way to build higher income jobs and provide greater economic mobility so people can move up that ladder and they don't get stuck at the bottom? Major issue that way. Earnings and income, Miami-Dade has historically paid less than the rest of the country. In North Miami, in the trade area, unfortunately, wages for individual workers average about 83% of the county average. So the need to create those higher paying jobs, that higher earning capacity, critical issue, major issues we're going forward. And as it says there, only 14% of all the employed workers in the trade and the market area earn more than the county median. So can we find ways to use this to leverage higher paying employment? Where residents work is another major issue, and this is the source of traffic. It's also a major economic loss. As I said, there are about 23,000 jobs in the trade area. That's the 3-minute radius. Within that radius, however, though, there are 42,000 people who are employed. So every day, 39,000 people are getting up every morning, most of them getting in cars, and leaving North Miami to work elsewhere. The bulk of them are working in City of Miami and Miami Beach, a number of going north. So that's one and a half times your entire economy getting up and leaving North Miami every single day. It's a source of traffic. It's lost revenue every day because that's 39,000 people who some portion of might be spending lunch, dry cleaning, other services during the day that you do during your work. It's revenue lost to other businesses. It's tax revenue lost to the city. Because if you capture back a lot of that workforce, now you're talking about buildings and offices and other development that are paying taxes. So major economic development issue. I'll talk about it as a strength, but it's a major weakness right now because you do have so many people getting up and leaving to work elsewhere. Last major weakness is the housing market here. The county as a whole, a number of issues. 92% of the housing in the trade area was built before 1980. This is becoming one of the oldest housing stocks in the county. Some ways that's good. You can find units that you can't find somewhere else. It is an indicator, however, that there's either disinvestment or not enough investment in new housing. And as houses start to get that age and older, it means they just cost that much more, and it's that much more out of pocket to maintain and replace those units over time. So the age of housing is one major issue. The other is that what's called cost burden. This is a term that the federal government uses, and it's basically the target income. The kind of ideal is that a family spends about 30% of its income on housing. That's the target. You start spending more than that, you become what's called cost burdened. As it turns out, Miami-Dade is the second most cost burdened county in the entire nation. Over 48% of the households in Miami-Dade County pay more than 30% of their income on housing. Unfortunately, in the trade area in the city of North Miami, that percentage is even higher than the county average. So you've got a lot of people struggling to pay higher cost, and it's not because costs of housing is high, it's because incomes are that much lower. And one of the interesting is that because of incomes are low, only about 23% of the housing stock that's in the trade area is actually affordable for people earning the median income of the trade area. And that stock is actually shrinking. It's dwindling rapidly across the county. The county, it's only about 13% of all the housing stock is affordable to families making the county median, which is about $49,000 a year. It's now approaching that in North Miami, a huge concern. So opportunities to provide higher income jobs, affordable housing, alleviate traffic issues, play into that's a major objective of TOD development like this. Let me finish on a high note in terms of strengths. North Miami, as I said, is a very interesting and potent economy, especially when you look at that total trade area. It's a major spending area. There's about $5 billion in personal income that's spent each year just inside that 12-mile radius. So it's a major economy within the state. What's also been happening is the shift in work. North Miami has enjoyed an increase in its labor force much faster than the rest of the county. Unemployment is dropping. The number of jobs created in North Miami has been rising very steadily since the recession. What's also been happening is the way people work's been changing pretty rapidly as well. Business establishments that actually have employees and pay people has been growing relatively quickly. What's called solo employment or self-employment has been growing extremely fast in Miami-Dade. And these aren't just kind of low-wage gigs. A wide number of professions paying really good money are now outsourced to solo practitioners, and to the point where Miami-Dade County has the fastest rate of self-employment in the entire country. And that's a trend to take note of. That's also a trend that plays right into North Miami's strengths, given the physical layout of the corridors and where the mobility hub might be. Small businesses rule this economy. Small business drives Miami-Dade more than it does the rest of the country. If you look at the 98% of businesses that employ 20 people or less, that makes up 98% of all businesses in Miami-Dade County. That's a percentage much higher than the rest of the country. So we're an economy that's driven by small businesses. We're actually an economy that succeeds by servicing small business. Another great opportunity and a strength here in North Miami. Also, a major strength of this economy, and also what I've seen through my experience in North Miami, is the rate of new business creation in terms of entrepreneurs. Miami-Dade is now #1 in the entire country in the terms of the percentage of people that go to start their own business. We're absolutely #1 in the entire country. There are issues with the survival rate of those companies, but in terms of creating new businesses in new fields, in new industries, we're the entrepreneurial capital of the United States. North Miami also has tremendous talent, and I see it working with the 7th Avenue CRA. There's a wide number of people with a lot of talent struggling to create new businesses that could otherwise get off the ground. That's another strength that's here, but one that needs to be tapped into and placed directly into this as well. In terms of the retail market, I know there's been previous discussions. Some of the plans talked about, well, North Miami's short on retail services and restaurants, food. Actually, our analysis that we've done, things have changed quite a bit over the last few years. It's hard to talk about anymore whether you really are short on retail, because so much of retail is moving to e-commerce. So people aren't investing in bricks and mortar for retail anymore. However, when you run the full numbers, North Miami, especially the trade area, that 3-minute radius around the city, is actually extremely well serviced by retail. In fact, there's a surplus. It turns out that North Miami is actually a retail destination for the rest of North Dade and big chunks of the county, because there's actually a lot more revenue coming into retail businesses than there is spending by the residents that live here. So the retail businesses that are here are very successful, not only in capturing local share, but they're actually drawing people from the rest of the region. The only segments that have major shortages of retail are landscape and garden, and those typically require big box locations. You don't have many of those sites here, and bars and restaurants. So those are the only two segments that are short in terms of retail. The rest is a really strong retail complex. It's also part of one of the biggest and most dynamic retail market areas in the entire county. So that retail is well serviced here, a strength to build on. Office market strength is, again, the way that businesses are making major changes in office space. The recession taught a lot of businesses that they really don't need big Class A office space downtown anymore, because they made more with less. Also, a lot of workers now are actually trading income, or actually negotiating more days of work at home, and that turns out to be as important as total compensation to most workers now. Majority of workers and employers now think that your ability to work at home 1 to 3 days a week is as important as how much as you get paid. So people are working at close to home. Businesses have figured this out. And so now major corporations, Dell being one of them, Dell expects that 75% of their entire global workforce is going to work from home by 2020. Major companies. And that goes down the line for every industry. They're figuring out a number of things. They're not paying for the huge suite spaces, kind of Class A downtown. They're moving offices to closer to where their employees live. And so they're opening satellite offices, or they're leasing co-working space. And as it turns out, Miami-Dade has the highest percentage of co-working office space as a share of its total office space square footage than any other metro in the entire country. We're the capital of co-working, which makes sense. We're the capital of entrepreneurial development, small business, so co-working fits into that. It's another unique opportunity and strength to take advantage of in projects like this, because now if you're starting to get people working at home, think about that 39,000 people that get up and leave the North Miami area every day. If you can keep them at home or close to home, they're now not getting in a car anymore to go to work. So you're solving a transportation and a traffic problem. They're staying close or at home during the day, so they're doing more spending during the day at home, and that's benefiting other businesses. So there's some major, and if they're now leasing space in co-working or other spaces, you've got increased tax revenue coming from those new office spaces. And as it turns out, co-working space is really easy to develop compared to traditional office space, right? I mean, it's large open rooms, some furniture, couches, and good coffee. You don't have the walls, the partitions, the construction expense is a lot simpler, so it actually opens up the market to a wider range of developers, small developers especially, doing well in the co-working market. So that's a real strength to have locally, and one I think could be played upon here in North Miami. The other housing market strengths, although North Miami, the area has a difficulty with cost burden and the number of families paying more than 30%, housing costs here are significantly less than the rest of the county. Housing prices are rising a little bit faster than the rest of the county, unfortunately, but still you've got a large stock, actually a very diverse stock of housing that's especially suitable for the way demographics are moving, which is toward non-family households, households without children, and smaller households. You've got actually a more diverse stock here in North Miami than the rest of the county has, and right now it's a hell of a lot more affordable than the rest of the county. So you do have an affordable housing opportunity here that needs to be tapped into and built upon. Basic demographics we talked about, and this is now really getting inside the radius of where the project is at, and a lot of these strengths and opportunities I've talked about continue even at the micro level. Over 8,000 residents, that's 13% of the city's population. So the same way that the market area is 13% of the county, this is 13% of the city's population living in proximity to where the mobility hub would be. Large number of households as well. You can see that the family size shrinks, and this is key. This is a key item to consider in developing housing and live-work opportunities in and around transit-oriented development is catering to that demographic. And it's typically non-family households, it's smaller households, or couples who have just gotten married without kids. And that's your kind of sweet spot demographic. You've already got that right here to the most. So you've got kind of a ready market who would be very interested in living and working in these types of spaces. You've got a captive audience almost. Race reflects the rest of the city as well. And in fact, the North Miami area is younger than the rest of the county. Well, the project area in micro is even younger than the rest of the city. So like I've said, you've got this young demographic to tap into with very different demands for how they want to live and how they want to work. Median income is an issue. As I said, that's raising median income is really critical, not just for the county, but for places like North Miami. That's the only way we're going to see real economic mobility and enabling people to move up the ladder. Thank you.
Three things. Thank you, Kevin. About 25 years ago, when I was a little younger, we were working on a master plan. And I like to think I'm a very creative guy, you know, I draw things and I make beautiful pictures, and we're doing this wonderful master plan. And we took it to our economist, and the economist says, you can't do that. But it's beautiful, look at it, it's got the buildings, it's got the roads. He says, no, it's not, you can't do that. The stuff that our economists tell us, and the things that they tell us are the parameters and the limitations, or sometimes the opportunities for the redevelopment or the development we're doing for the communities that we work in. So it took me a while to learn that they would create the framework for the wonderful things that we can design and build. Second thing, I also work at home occasionally, and one of the wonderful things about that is you can dress like this on the top and wear shorts on the bottom. Just don't get up and answer the phone. That's what I learned. So working at home is a new thing, and it's very convenient. My wife makes wonderful coffee. She's a college professor, so she's at home quite a bit teaching or learning or doing her program stuff. So that's a good thing. And the third thing is, what are the big ideas for North Miami? Every community that we work in, we find a big idea. We don't always know what it is. And one of the earlier plans that I worked on, we had a problem with connectivity. We had things going on the main road. We had 30,000 cars going down the main road. Downtown is one block over. No one was going to, downtown was dying. And we had another perpendicular road that went up to a big army base. And I said, the road is disconnected. So I took a big black magic marker and I said, let's do this. And created a road that connected all the way through. And they said, you can't realign a road. You can't rebuild a road like that. They did it. And all that economic development went to that corridor. Sometimes it's housing, and it surprises us. We learned that. We did a project in South Carolina just recently, and we had the opposite problem of affordable housing. We had a very highly paid workforce. And we said, why don't you live in the county? Why are you out traveling and out migrating every single day? The housing stock within the county didn't have the right feel, didn't have the right aesthetic. It wasn't big enough, it wasn't fancy enough, so they were leaving. So you never know what's going to happen. And we're doing The keypad polling is next. One of the things that's going to come out of the keypad polling, hopefully, will be some of these big ideas for North Miami. We don't know what it is yet. And it could be a catalyst project, or it could be something even more unique than that. So, pick up your... We have a series of 10 questions. It's very simple. You push the button and you and hit enter. Is that correct, Tim? Am I getting that right?
One press of the button and they're done.
Okay.
Except for
So you
mobile.
push one, whatever it is, one click, and it goes directly into the computer. We have one multiple choice question, and we'll get to that later, and I'll describe that as we move along. Question 1.
We don't see it.
There it is. What area in North Miami do you live and or own property? It's pretty simple. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I see 27.
27.
Okay, time's up. Next question.
No, this is the
Oh,
answer.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, here's the results. We have 60% others. Whatever other is. It tells us that we have people that are driving into North Miami. Like, as Kevin described, there's a lot of in and out migration in North Miami. So it means that a lot of folks who are interested in this project are outside that.
Or they're living outside the study area, which is what we were talking about. The study area is what we showed you, which is the 125th and that corridor. So they're outside, but they're interested in what's happening. And that's what we're talking about. There would be people who would probably be ready to move in as well and stay close. And this could change in the next project that we do.
Yeah.
Next question, please.
How long have you lived or worked in North Miami? No cheaters. Be honest.
Yeah. Go back in time. Go back in time, I'm sure.
Okay. Time's up.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, that's a pretty equal spread. Less than 5 years?
Yeah,
More
this
than
is-
20 years? Raise your hand if you've been here more than 20 years. I'm just curious. Oh, okay.
Hmm.
All right, wonderful.
And then we have the same for I don't live here or work here.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, next question, please. What is your age? No cheaters. Be honest, again.
28. We've got 28 responses.
Yeah.
That's what we have, Tim? 28 is the total?
Yeah.
All right.
Ah, in your 50s?
All right.
And surprised that in
20s,
the
40s.
30s is a little bit lower than we were expecting. Under 20. I see this. Yeah, you're under 20.
Did you click under 20? All right. That's all.
Well, good, good. And 70 or over. Congratulations. Next question, please. What is your relationship to North Miami that got you excited about this meeting tonight? I'd like to think that it's us.
Yeah, right. We didn't send our pictures out, so
Yeah.
no. 27 and one more. 28.
28. Okay.
I live here.
Okay, so most of your residents live right in the city boundary, correct?
Shop here. Nobody shops
Shop?
here.
Nobody
They live
shops
here, but
here?
they're not
You don't
shopping
shop here? You don't buy antiques?
Yeah, but Mo can one answer. You can do.
All right, well, it's prioritization. I get that. Okay, next question, please. What is your primary way of traveling in and around North Miami? I think I already know the answer to this one. $28. There it is.
And we guessed that.
Personal car.
And everyone knew about it. South Florida.
We're geniuses. We truly are. We figured that this would be about 80 to 90%, and we were correct.
But I think this is interesting too. We've got people who are walking, cycling, Ubering, if that's a word.
And in some other metro areas where I've lived before, these numbers
Yeah.
go way up, and that numbers come down. So, like I said, my daughter doesn't even own a car. I said, how do you not own a car? Don't need one. Next question, please. What is your favorite activity in North Miami?
It's a favorite. What is your favorite?
Just your favorite. If you had to pick one. It becomes revealing in statistical analysis, but everybody's got a favorite.
Oh, yeah, 28, 26. All right. Going to restaurants, visiting parks and green spaces.
And where are these parks and green spaces that you're going to?
Oh, that's great.
Yeah? Okay.
Okay.
My favorite is the big park that's a little bit to the north. Yes. And next question, please. If using your personal car was not a choice, okay, the 82%, you don't have a car, how would you prefer to travel for longer trips, like to your job or shopping, that is more than a 2-mile jaunt? So you can't walk, you have to take some other way of getting there.
The car's been taken away.
Your car's
There is no
gone.
car. The car's gone.
Your kid wrecked it, or it's broken, or whatever.
Bicycle and train.
I like that
Interesting.
one.
Car sharing as well?
Not a lot of walkers here, right? No?
No.
It's hot. It's hot in Florida. Yeah, I get it.
No, that's greater than 2 miles. They're not going to walk greater than 2 miles, right? Yeah, probably not.
Yeah, you're right. I can't
Right.
do it either.
Next.
Next question, please. Next 2 questions is top 3 answers. So it's a little different. So what you do is you pick your top answer, enter. Second, enter.
Send.
Third, enter.
So enter the number of your first answer and then press send. So you would see a message received. Then the second, then the third.
You ready for this one? Okay. What are the most pressing challenges faced by North Miami citizens? And then you have 3 choices. Prioritize. 1, 2, 3. And we're going to give you a little more time on this one. That doesn't help us. But there is an other.
$22. We're looking for 6 more
6 more. Come on.
responses.
That's a hard one.
24. 4 more.
Come on.
Just 4 more. $25. We're there. We're almost there. $26. You done? Perfect.
Okay.
Show you the first one to do with.
Let's see what we got. We can, yeah, there it is.
All right.
Yeah, traffic congestion.
Lack of destinations.
We say deteriorating public
Public
infrastructure. We assume the roads are crumbling and
No employment. Not enough housing choices. Lack of mobility.
Okay.
So. All right.
very good.
Next one.
3 choices again. What types of amenities, incentives, facilities would encourage you to use a bus or rail or transit? What kind of amenities, incentives, or facilities, could be anything, would encourage you to use a bus or rail transit? And they are prioritized again. 1, send. 2, send. 3, send.
For 23, 25. Yes. 26 and 27.
Okay, I think we're there.
All right.
Improve pedestrian infrastructure, number 1, huh?
And cycling.
Number 7, real-time bus and train information. Okay. And provide enough parking near. Parking is a problem here? Yeah.
Near bus or rail transit stops.
Okay. Next, please. And this is just a one-answer question again. Sorry. What kind of new development would you like to see along the FEC railroad tracks? And that's the corridor from the south of 123rd, 125th, going across 125th, 123rd, and going north. You know it's there today. It's a lot of warehousing. It's a lot of industrial type site. What would you like to see there in the future? Pardon me? Yes, I understand. But I mean, we're talking about
And
just
that's
the
where
area
we have the
along the
single
corridor,
family homes.
close in. Yeah. And maybe that's more housing for people that live nearby. They want to see more of the same thing. Yeah. Entertainment is by far number 1. Interesting. Cafes, breweries, bakeries. And single-family homes. So when you say single-family homes, what that tells us is that you like the fabric of the single-family homes. You like the way it looks, the way it feels, the shaded trees. The streets are wonderful with a big tree arching over the top, which is kind of rare here in Florida sometimes. You don't always see these wonderful canopies around the streets. We understand that. That's a very positive thing. And that's one of the things that we had brought up early on when we started doing our reconnaissance in and around North Miami, and I've been running around here for the past 3 years, is that these side streets that are parallel to 125th are really nice streets. They're really beautiful streets. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
It's an amenity.
I think we're done.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. We'll have more questions next time. We'll get some music also. We'll play Jeopardy. We're going to do all that. We just wanted to try this out for the first time and see how you guys respond. Next workshop, there's going to be a lot more. We're just going to do this.
And there'll be a lot more people. And it's fun. It's one of those fun things to do. So we really enjoy it too. But what it does, what it tells us is it gives us it's a trending statistical analysis. It tells us what direction we ought to prioritize in terms of our study. We've got limited time because we are going to be wrapping up the end of June, and it's already April, so our time is very tight. So what these things tell us is what we need to focus in on, and that's important to us. Next.
We need the presentation for the next. Can we please set the oh, there we do.
It's you.
All right. Go ahead, David.
The M in mobility. What is and we already talked about that. The M in mobility isn't just cars. The M is pedestrians, it's walking, it's transit. And one of the things that I like to talk about are intersections, because we call those sleeves sometimes. Sleeve is where pedestrians cross busy streets. How do you get from one side to the other? How the chicken get to the other side of the road without getting hit by 6 lanes of traffic, right? Biking, shared mobility is another, and roads. So the mobility is all of these things. And we start talking about a mobility-oriented development. We're talking about all these modes, not just one. And the O is the orientation or the context or the things that we are going to be doing within that area. Station plazas, which is a public space. And one of the interesting things about these TODs and these MODs is that you create a lot of public space because you're bringing people in and you're taking people out, but in between you have all these pedestrian nodes and a lot of walkable space. And also creative placemaking. We say placemaking is one of the things that the IBI group specializes in. Creating a sense of place. It's a brand, it's a definition of your community. What says North Miami? Open spaces, public parks, and public facilities. Next, please. And what kind of development would you like to see? What kind of development is coming? Local mixed use along the corridors, or is it contextual infill? Is it TOD that goes beyond the 30-year window that we're talking about? Or these other things, transitional infill and mixed use redevelopment and local scale residential infill, which really is taking what's there and repurposing it, rebuilding it, and doing something a little different.
just to add to the D, we're also talking about diversity over here. We're not talking about that the plan that we're going to be looking at, it's going to be seeing taller buildings, high rises everywhere. No, we're talking about diversity of the housing stock. We're talking about diversity of the people that work over here. So the D goes beyond just development that we're saying over here. All the development, we're not talking about everything over here has to change. The stable residential neighborhoods like we saw, the single families, they are the bones of this place. We need to make sure that we are preserving those. That's important. The development is going to be on strategic nodes that we're going to be looking at. It's not going to be spread out everywhere. And that's the reason why we've taken a larger area. Typically when transit-oriented developments are looked at, it's just the quarter-mile area around it which is seen. We understand and we acknowledge the fact with the city that we have to look at the corridors as well, where the traffic can be taken. New development would mean more traffic. So where is the capacity? We don't want to go into the neighborhoods per se.
And how do you preserve the neighborhood? That's why I like the comment about the single-family home. Preserving, put it in this context. Disney spent a lot of money on some things.
David, D for David. Can't hear you. Yeah, why don't you just use the podium
Not
now?
a battery.
Yeah.
That last part was not recorded, so I can say it better this time. But anyway, Disney spent a lot of money recreating the single-family development that everybody likes, the canopy trees and the single-family homes. Millions of dollars to recreate it, when many neighborhoods that we work in already have those things. So can you recreate it, or we preserve it if we think that's important, and we do. It's very difficult to recreate, but it can be done, and they've proved that.
One of the purposes of this workshop was also to share whatever we've been finding so that we can listen to you as well. I mean, we're talking to you right now, but what we want to do is we have half an hour left for this. We're running a little short on time, but we're just going to go through a lot of this. All this is going to be put up on the website as well. We have a website which is there in the background, and I would request you to please go and visit that. But what we're looking at over here, some of the interesting parts which Kevin was also pointing out earlier, is that when you just look at this area, which you see as the half-mile area around 125th and 123rd and the corridors, 45% of the people spend more than 22% of their income on transportation. We're talking about, yes, we've got 2 car shared locations. We've got enough transit routes within the study area, which are there, which is the bus transit. It's also about strengthening the bus transit. So when I was talking about Vancouver earlier, where we lived, the rail transit wasn't there always. When we moved there, it's the bus system, which was so robust that we could go, everyone was using the bus as well. Right now, all of us don't use the bus. So the strengthening needs to happen in the bus system as well, which is working with the Miami-Dade County, as well as looking at the TPO, what the SMART plan is saying. So that's going to be important. David?
And streetscape projects, you're looking at the guy who was one of the designers of 125th Street that's being implemented here very shortly. And the things that we heard early on were very simple. Canopy trees, but at the same time, do not reduce the number of lanes on the street. We couldn't do it. What we were able to do with a very clever design is to add bump outs on part of the street. Bump out is just a projection of the curb into the parking area, and added canopy trees all the way up and down the street. We understand the importance of conveying that traffic that runs through 125th. We're not going to reduce that. No one's going to reduce that. However, what you can do, and a lot of these projects are pointing to that, is do a complete streets, which is kind of a trademark thing. But complete streets is adding trees, adding pedestrian amenities, making it more pedestrian oriented, and also adding bicycles as part of that transit system. So 125th in particular is a complete street. The things that are happening on Dixie and on 6th as well will be more complete streets in terms of adding pedestrian amenities. So we see these projects as very positive, moving toward what we're trying to do as well. Again, we're trying to combine all these things together.
I think one of the important parts also in this particular map is to realize that the 125th Street corridor and the 123rd connecting to the Biscayne is our major corridor as well. Well, we need to start looking at also connections from east-west over here. How do we strengthen that, whether it's 135th, 131st, or start also looking at how do you have other areas. You don't want traffic to start going in all the neighborhoods, but how do you prioritize that? How would we be proactive about identifying this? And that's what we would be asking you to do. During the end, we acknowledge the fact that all streets cannot be complete streets. You can't have dedicated bicycle tracks in all streets. There is limited right-of-way that's available. We'd have to start prioritizing that as well. These are some of the things that are already happening in some way or the other. There's the Nomi Express, which is expanding. There's a plan to expand that. The Lime Bike, the dockless bicycle sharings, it's everywhere. When we did our survey, one of the demographic that was using it the most was the school children. We realized when we started looking at the high school and the other places, the kids were using this a lot because it was giving them the freedom of taking it, leaving it somewhere else. So there's something which is what we need to look at is a larger cycle sharing network that needs to be created and promoted as well. The zip card is there in Johnson and Wales University on the campus. How do we start looking at car sharing at a citywide level, or do we? That's the question that we have. Then we have the Jitney service, which is an informal system that is working on certain streets. How do we start looking at that? Because that exists. How do we integrate that as well? There are these challenges if the limited right-of-way that we're dealing with, that's going to remain. There are these numbers which we're looking at. They're very high when we start looking at 42,000, 53,000. These are the average annual daily traffic rates. So whatever we do, we have to also start understanding the impact that development is going to happen on this. There is going to be increased congestion as population increases. We can't be reducing that. But what are the alternatives that we create for it is what the focus of this mobility hub plan is also going to be. These are just some images just to show when we're talking about the right-of-ways. We're abutting properties over here. We want to put shade trees, increase the parking, increase the pedestrian space. All these are going to be challenges. Future trends, yes, there is a tri-rail station that is being talked about. Nobody knows when that's going to come in exactly, but it's a reality. It will happen someday again. Now, when it happens, we still have to get to the train station, wherever it comes in. But what's going to be important is to do the first and last mile connectivity to the downtown and the entire city. How do you connect that to the transit station? Because that's going to be the only transit station in North Miami. These are future trends which already are existing. We learned this in our first meeting, kickoff meeting. TOD was an app which is being followed, where your car is sitting for the entire day, you just rent it out, and that's going to be something which people are probably going to be using more.
Yeah. Who would want to rent a Porsche or a Lamborghini for a day and just...
But you could do a Honda Civic, man.
Or a Honda Civic. I feel like those sort of things. And creative placemaking. Again, we had talked earlier about tactical urbanism. And creative placemaking is, we have an opportunity, I think, on 8th. As 8th transitions into a greenway, and that's one of the projects. 8th, right outside. For a day, cut the street off. Let's make it the greenway the way it was envisioned as part of the plan. We'll do it for a day. Take the cars off, add trees, add people, add benches. It's an idea that we had. And then that then pours into the plaza space, which is now a bit underutilized. It's kind of a weird space to me as a designer because it doesn't really have a function. It doesn't have any amenitization to it. So you'd be surprised the kind of transition you get. And I was recently traveling and I was walking down the street, and right off the street there's a place called Eat Shop. Eat Shop. And that's in Ireland, and that's Ireland speak for come on in and eat casually. But what it was is a very temporary place where they had added cubicles and setup. We call them food carts and food trucks, but it wasn't like that. But anyway, that's the kind of thing we would like to try on the plaza for a day. And then, of course, the benefits would be spread to local businesses for the day, and they would see the benefit of how that plaza could be redesigned and how 8th could become a pedestrian way as well. So it's all, this is what's coming, give you a feel for it, at least for a day.
This is what we're looking at right now as it relates to the single-family neighborhoods, the high-density, multifamily, and low-density, how it is today. Just going to go through it, where we work, what are the areas, where the offices, where we shop, where the industrial areas are, where the residential areas near the railroad tracks are. We're looking at one of the things which this map would show is within this half-mile radius or 10-minute walk from 125th, 123rd, we're not looking at any parks and open spaces per se that jump out, which are significant. There's some outside, which are there, but we would have to start focusing on that and increasing that percentage through this plan, looking at opportunities to do that.
Do a little tactical park and recreationism.
These are some of the projects that are ongoing, and we'll see how they go. We just want to make sure we have taken into account what's happening. This is what is going to be proposed as per projections which are there. Kevin had gone into it a little bit. Here's what we're looking at available land if we were to develop these areas around this half-mile area. There's not a lot of land which is there right now, vacant land that we would be able to develop, but there's underutilized land.
Yeah.
There's a lot of parking areas, which surface parking lots which are there, which need to be looked at also as part of this.
And one thing I think we'll add to this map isn't just land, but large buildings and big boxes that may be underutilized for repurposing. And then you start seeing a little different fabric. When you see just the vacant land, and you just see that one little amber spot right there, once you put the bigger buildings in there, then you get a whole different look and feel. And one of the gentlemen in the room tonight said, well, he was a guy who does redevelopment, and said, why not redo the buildings too? So that would be part of this as well. And I like this because it's kind of a little bit of a microcosm of the project, because it shows the entire area that we're dealing with, from the high school and Dixie all the way to FEC, and then beyond to Biscayne Boulevard. So this is the area we're dealing with mostly. And then if you zoom in on it, can't talk. I have to be recorded. That's the major intersection, 125th, 123rd, and FEC. So when we started looking at the environmental maps, I said, this area is high and dry. The railroad track is elevated. We have a site here, in contrast to some of the areas that are further, and I won't mention who they are, to the northeast that are quite low. Now, and those people who believe in global warming, I'm one of them. As sea levels rise, and they are rising, we're already working in communities like Charleston, for example, that water is already coming in and inundating some of the homes there, and they've never had that before historically, ever. So we know it's coming. This is high and dry. It's a great site.
Harold, would you like to just come quickly?